I'd like to share some of my observations of the movie Black Phone. This was a movie that I was interested in seeing when I saw the preview, and also when I found out that the director is Scott Derrickson. Scott Derrickson is kind of an under-the-radar director. He's not really a name director like, you know, a Scorsese or Lynch or somebody like that. But within the horror genre, he has made some interesting films. The one that caught my attention the most was way back in 2006. He directed a movie called The Exorcism of Emily Rose, which was so interesting to me that I actually wrote about it, and I will link to my piece, my now ancient piece on that movie from now almost 15 years ago. What interested me about this particular movie, The Exorcism of Emily Rose, is that he was taking a certain stand as a director for not discounting the supernatural, and the movie itself. You know, the main character in the movie is someone who is, if not an atheist, then very, very strongly agnostic, but who's taken on this case of having to defend this priest who lost a girl to a botched exorcism, and now he's being held criminally responsible. So she takes this case and follows up on what the exorcism was and the story behind it, and she begins to learn that perhaps there's more to life than what there are more things on heaven and earth, Horatio, than can be found in our philosophies, to quote Hamlet. She finds something. She finds out something to that effect. And by the end of the movie, she's not exactly a believer, but she's more open to the possibility of belief in the supernatural. And I remember this movie at the time, you know, caught some people's attention, even ruffled some feathers. And since then, I don't know what's happened to Derrickson, you know, specifically as a person. He's managed to stay within the Hollywood scene and to direct movies, and some of the movies that he's directed have also been on similar themes, which makes me sometimes wonder or suspect if he might be a closet, you know, conservative, or like perhaps a closet Catholic, or I remember in some interview back in 2006, he said something to the effect of, I'm one Chesterton book away from becoming Catholic. So I don't know what's become of him since then. When I looked up his bio, I saw certain things that made me suspect that perhaps he was not going in the right direction as far as all that goes. But these are just, I mean, these are things that I don't know if I want to spend too much time on. They're just little things that make me wonder. Like, you know, you just, are you able to dwell within the Hollywood system and hang with, you know, movie stars, and you know, he even directed a Marvel film, Doctor Strange. You know, can you stay within that framework? within that society, and not be not become one of them, quote unquote. So anyway, that's just some background on the director. There's like, I see a degree or a measure of what you could call basedness in his work, something that eludes the the propaganda mill, what we typically hear out of Hollywood types, not just about faith and questions relating to faith and the possibility of supernatural good and evil being real, but as you'll see in a minute, when I talk about the Black Phone, there are aspects to this movie that that break the mold, that don't gel with what generally speaking we are being trained to fixate on or to believe about the world. So the movie itself is it's a Stephen King-esque horror movie, and it's based on a short story written by Joe Hill, who is the son of Stephen King. And it is set in this kind of rural, kind of grungy, kind of rundown area, kind of what almost looks like, pardon the term, white trash area. It's not just white people, but predominantly, working class white people. Also a few ethnics thrown in, and it's supposed to be set in I think southern Colorado, but I could tell from the first shot of the movie that it was not actually filmed in Colorado, because the first shot is of a baseball field, and the color of the dirt in the infield is red. Now, I happen to live in the state of Georgia, and there's a lot of talk about red Georgia clay, and that's what the dirt tends to look like around here, around these parts. Not specifically where I live, because where I live right now is on the coast, but you get further, where that changes the sedimentary admixture. I don't know what to call it. I'm out of my depth when I talk about such things. But you get further inland, and you'll see just mounds of this red Georgia clay. That's the color. If nothing is growing, that's the color of the dirt. It turns out the movie was filmed in Wilmington, North Carolina. So it's still the South generally. But it's set in southern Colorado, which I think was the doing of Derrickson, because I think that's his own background. That's what his childhood was like, and it's set in the late 70s, which it puts it in sort of, and the main characters are kids, so it kind of puts it in the realm of Stranger Things, being something that's in the past, with kids being the major characters, and the acting is really, really good. Again, just like in Stranger Things, they have these kid actors who are just amazing. The lead character is a boy, maybe around 14 or so years of age. His sister is maybe around 12, and they have a very unsettled home life. Their dad is this erratically behaving alcoholic who is at times abusive. The way the movie is filmed, I'm out of my depth when it comes to cinematography and so forth. All the same, almost as much as I am when I'm talking about soil, but it's filmed in an interesting manner that's kind of sepia toned. There's it helps to enhance the kind of rundown feel of things. Again, this is not the fancy side of town. This is very much a rough and tumble kind of a neighborhood, and there's violence. The main character, the boy, gets picked on often. Has to elude bullies, but he's got a friend who stands up for him, who beats back the bullies, while the kid is sort of a little bit hasn't quite learned yet to stand up for himself. Now here's where I think here are the qualities of the movie that I think are interesting in that they are a somewhat countercultural aspect when it comes to the sort of things we normally see, the sort of things that are normally promoted in movies and on TV today. This is very much a movie about masculinity, about youth, about boyhood, and it's a coming of age story, but it's also a horror story and a suspense story and a very freaky horror story with a villain who is clearly a pervert, clearly a pedophile who prefers boys, whose victims are all boys. Now, we never see him do anything sexual to any of his victims, but there's a lot of suggestion of that's his attraction. There's one scene after he abducts our hero, forces him into this basement. Here he has to sleep on this wretched mattress. He spends time down there with him, and the boy wakes up and says, "What are you doing?" And the villain, who's known as the Grabber, played by Ethan Hawke, says, "Oh, I was just watching you sleep." Very creepy. There's lots of lines like that that suggest, that he's getting off on this, literally getting off on kidnapping boys, tormenting them mentally before torturing and murdering them. Now, the supernatural elements in this movie, just like we have in other Scott Derrickson movies, here there's two supernatural elements. One is the hero's sister, who's this young Spitfire. Again, very, very adorable. Very, very endearing. Well, this girl has dreams and premonitions, and visions of things, which the element of having a character who can foresee things or see what evil lurks in the hearts of men. It's not exactly anything new. It's you could almost say it's a cliche of these kinds of movies, or it often is. You often have a character like this who has this sort of gift. But here, I think it's interesting in that it shows that there is some supernatural role. Also, and more significantly, I think, in the movie, the boy, while he's imprisoned in this basement of this pervert, this serial killing pedophile pervert, he keeps hearing this phone. This black phone, hence the title of the movie. He keeps hearing the phone ring. When he picks it up, he hears from former victims of the grabber. And some of them, aren't very nice or friendly or helpful, but some of them are. And one of them, the last victim of the grabber, was his good friend, the one who stood up for him in school, and he's the one who gives him this kind of counsel that helps him to finally, stand up for himself, to become a man, as it were, and not just give in to evil, but fight it. Now, Hollywood likes to show us perverted men, but they mostly like to show us perverted men who have girls or women as their victims. But as there are plenty of IRL perverts who victimize adolescent boys. And the character, I think, in this movie is somewhat based on John Wayne Gacy, homosexual, pedophile, convicted murderer, who somewhat terrifyingly dressed like a clown and entertained children at their birthday parties. The character in this movie is sort of a similar type of figure. He wears a mask over his face, and sometimes it's a smiling mask, and sometimes it's a sad mask, and it's got a top piece, or it has a piece up here and a piece down here, and sometimes he wears both of them, and sometimes you can see his actual top part of his face, but the bottom part of his face is wearing a mask. And that's all very cleverly done. But I just think it's interesting that in this movie, the movie draws attention to a pervert who is an evil predator whose prey is young boys. And so the ones who are the most vulnerable, shown to be the most vulnerable in this movie, are young adolescent boys. Now, I'm not taking anything away from the fact that girls are victimized as well, but we don't as often see boys as victims, or boys as the targets of sick, evil, demented freaks. And so in that sense, this movie shows us a truth about masculinity. First, it shows that it's hard being a young boy, getting bullied, getting humiliated, every day being this new horror that awaits if you're not, on the top of the pecking order, or the totem pole. And you also, then you don't really have much refuge, because you go home and your dad's this abusive drunk. So it shows what boys go through in a very sympathetic way, and I think that's something that I could appreciate about the movie, and something that I also think is counter-cultural in a sense, just because we don't often see it drawn attention to in that way. Usually we just see, if boys are talked about, it's like, oh, boys are being mean to girls, boys are harassing girls, and girls are the ones who really have it rough. Now, again, I'm not saying girls can't have it rough as well. It's not a competition. I'm just saying we don't often see this kind of sympathy, especially for young boys, as is displayed in this movie. And that's something I really appreciated about it. Now, anytime there is a movie about children being terrorized, children being menaced, there is also this kind of queasy undercurrent of fetishism. I think that sexual violence, or implied sexual violence, often is portrayed, often is accompanied by, anyway, this kind of voyeuristic aspect, and I think in that sense there's something inherently discomforting about a movie like this, just because of the subject matter. that's not me indicting anybody who went into the making of this movie, but I just think it's something that I find hard not to draw attention to. And you know, why do writers like Stephen King and Joe Hill, his son, why do they feel compelled to write about things like this? You know, it's certainly a question that's worth asking. But with that caveat aside, and I guess that's just a caveat that applies to a lot of movies, a lot of books. You know, the sexual violence often has a creepy undercurrent of voyeurism and even fetishism. In spite of that, I do recommend this movie if you are a horror movie person. I think it's very well made. It's very suspenseful, very well acted, and it gives. There are some positive messages in it about the need to stand up for yourself, the need to be a man, to face down your fears, and so forth, which seem like cliches, but in this movie they're done in a way that's a little different from the way you usually see them. Plus, as I said, this movie is countercultural in ways that I could appreciate for the reasons I've enumerated already. So those are my thoughts on Black Phone. Let me know if you've seen it, what your thoughts are. Thanks for watching.